Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 818, and today is July 10th, 2025. I'm the host of this show, Kyle Anzalone. I got a ton of news to catch up on, and of course, I am late with this episode of the show. I have had a cold for about a week now, and it's really slowing down my progress, but over the past couple days, I had a hell of a cough that just made it impossible to record. But my voice is mostly bad today, so I am going to try to hammer out at least like a 25-minute episode here for you guys, catching up on a lot of the important news going on. So be sure to share the show. We are hosted over at the Libertarian Institute, libertarianinstitute.org, for pretty much all my work, the articles that I write, the daily email blast that goes out, and this show in the daily news roundup, all hosted over at the Libertarian Institute. I also do some writing for antiwar.com and judgenap.com. I'm the opinion editor over at antiwar.com, so check out the viewpoint section on that page. You can also find this show in the blog section of antiwar.com. And of course, subscribe to my all-new show, my new project, The Kyle Anzalone Show. We are over 1,000 subscribers now on YouTube. We are really picking up some steam, so help us keep the momentum going. Head on over and subscribe. It is the first link in the show notes page. Today at 4:45 Eastern, I'm interviewing Benjamin Abelow. All right, everybody, let's get into the news of today. First off, this article I wrote on July 8th at the Libertarian Institute. U.S. Patriot missile stockpiles a fraction of what the Pentagon needs. So the ongoing wars in the Middle East and Ukraine have depleted the U.S. stockpile of missile interceptors. The Pentagon has just a quarter of the Patriot missiles it needs. According to The Guardian, the United States only has about 25% of the Patriot missile interceptors it needs for all the Pentagon's military plans after burning through stockpiles in the Middle East in recent months, an alarming depletion that led the Trump administration to freeze the latest transfer of munitions to Ukraine. We'll have more on that in a bit. U.S. weapons manufacturers can only produce about 500 Patriot missiles per year. I think the actual number that gets published is 550. I know they're trying to ramp that up, not sure how it's going. The U.S. used dozens of interceptors to defend Israel from Iranian retaliatory attacks last month. Additionally, the Pentagon engaged in its largest Patriot battle in history to repel a symbolic Iranian missile attack on a U.S. airbase in Qatar. The stockpile of air and missile defenses has been drained to aid Ukraine during the war with Russia. Missile interceptors are in short supply in the West. In May, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is also the National Security Advisor, told Congress that Ukrainians asked for missile defense systems, Patriot systems, which frankly we do not have. He also said that the White House was trying to get some U.S. allies to get Patriots to Ukraine, but likewise they have shortage of supplies and don't want to hand them over. It is unclear if Trump reversed the Pentagon order to halt some arms transfers to Ukraine, including Patriot missiles, and again, we'll get into more of this in a second. One last detail I want to add here, a lot of what the West is now sending to Ukraine are not actually systems intended to be missile defenses, but rather systems that have been converted into missile defenses. And so I believe the AIM maybe 90. There are the air-to-air missiles that the U.S. is giving Ukraine. Those are being, I believe, put on F-16s and used to target incoming Russian missiles. The U.K. also has some air-to-air missiles that they've converted into a ground-launched missile defense system called the Raven system that they've sent quite a few over to Ukraine. All right, next up, this one here from judgenap.com on July 8th. Trump orders Pentagon to send more arms to Ukraine. President Donald Trump directed the Pentagon to send additional arms to Ukraine. The order follows a Pentagon decision to halt some arms transfers to Kiev due to shortages. During Trump's dinner with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, on Monday, the president told reporters that he would, quote, send more weapons, end quote, to Ukraine. Trump didn't state which weapon systems will be deployed. So, A statement from the Pentagon confirmed the president has given orders to send more weapons to Ukraine. The apparent reversal in weapons transfers to Kiev follows the conversation between Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, which both leaders reported was positive. Additionally, Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin, a conversation which Trump described as disappointing. Last week, the Pentagon announced it would halt some arms transfers to Ukraine due to shortages in U.S. stockpiles. The Wall Street Journal reported that the frozen weapons included Patriot PAC-3 missiles, more than 24 Stinger air defense systems, Hellfire air-to-ground missiles, and more than 90 AIM air-to-air missiles, among other systems. The DoD currently assesses it doesn't have enough of the Patriot systems. Now, I did read a report from Axios that said the U.S. would go ahead and move some 10, I believe, Patriot interceptors into Ukraine. So that is certainly not going to even repel one Russian missile barrage, and yet that's all the Ukrainians are getting. Next up here, trainers use amputee actors to prepare Ukrainian soldiers for war. So losing a limb on the battlefield has become so common for Ukrainian soldiers that military instructors in the UK have hired amputee actors to prepare the young men for what they will see in war. Colonel Boardman, I don't know if that's like a call name or his actual name, but this was the name that Business Insider gave him. Commander of the UK's training program for Ukrainian soldiers told the outlet, quite a lot of them are amputees. They add a sense of realism to the exercises. When you come across a casualty and it's someone with a leg missing at the knee and lots of theater makeup all over them. And the idea is to bring a bit of shock and a little bit of reality to really get the recruit to the moment and make them really think it's a genuine casualty they're having to deal with. Actually, putting a tourniquet on a stump is different from putting a tourniquet on a healthy leg. So NATO members have trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers to feed into the meat grinder with Russia. Many Western politicians tout the proxy war in Ukraine as successfully weakening Russia without their own soldiers dying. Some, such as Senator Lindsey Graham, have criticized Kiev for maintaining its minimum age of conscription above 18. Many of the young men dying on the front lines were not willing recruits, but draftees forced to fight. Colonel Boardman said the UK trains the Ukrainians to be prepared for battle immediately following basic training. We probably teach them more than we would teach our British Army recruits because our British Army recruits don't go straight off to war back of their basic training. We're trying to make the soldiers not only able to survive the environment, but also as lethal and as effective as they can be. And look, they want them to be able to kill Russian soldiers, as many Russian soldiers as possible. This is, of course, if they wanted what was best for these Ukrainian soldiers, rather than training them, they would be making a deal with Russia to end this conflict. All right, some news on Gaza, and it's all horrific. Just starting off here. Israeli Defense Minister orders plan to build concentration camp for Gaza's civilian population. So David Karen wrote this one for antiwar.com on July 7th. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has ordered the IDF to prepare a plan to establish a camp to concentrate the entire civilian population of Gaza on the ruins of the southern city of Rafah. According to Haaretz, Katz said once the Palestinian civilians are pushed into what he is calling a humanitarian city, they will not be allowed to leave. The idea is to transfer 600,000 civilians from the Al-Mawasi tent camp city on the coast in southern Gaza, followed by the rest of the civilian population. Katz said that if conditions permit, the city could be built during a potential 60-day ceasefire, comments that will make Hamas less likely to agree to a temporary truce. The Israeli defense minister also said that during the ceasefire, Israel will maintain control of the Morag corridor, a strip of land that separates Rafah and Khan Yunis, the two major cities in southern Gaza. Katz has also suggested the camp can facilitate the government's ultimate goal of ethnic cleansing, which it refers to as voluntary migration, telling reporters that Israel will implement the immigration plan, which will happen. The Israeli finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has previously said the goal of Israel's current military operations, dubbed Gideon Chariots, is to create a concentration camp south of the Moreh corridor and pressure the civilians forced into it to leave. So Smotrich said in May, the Gazan citizens will be concentrated in the south. They will be totally despairing, understanding that there is no hope and nothing to look for in Gaza, and will be looking for relocation to begin a new life in other places. Now, one key piece of this that I wanted to bring up and kind of remind people of is that other countries don't want to take in the Palestinians, not just because they're dictatorships who worry that the Palestinians coming in could mix up their ruling system, like the Hashemite king in Jordan, like the military dictator al-Sisi in Egypt, like the jihadist al-Jolani in Syria. All these people, don't want the Palestinians coming in for their own political reasons, but also because it's seen as being a part of, to help the Israelis commit the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, the murder of all these people in Gaza. And so rather than taking in the Palestinians, they're going to resist this because they don't want to be a part of the ethnic cleansing. Now, at the very beginning of this war, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tasked his closest ally, Ron Dermer, to come up with a plan to remove all the Palestinians. And Dermer recognized this problem, that the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Iraqis, nobody will want to be seen as aiding Israel's genocide by taking in the Palestinians, unless the condition for the Palestinians in Gaza is so horrific, is so brutal, that even people who don't want to help with a genocide, with an ethnic cleansing, would take in the Palestinians in order not to see what has happened to them happen. And I think this is a big part of it. They're going to box them all into this tent city. They're not going to give them enough food. They're going to make sure civil society breaks down. And then they're going to pressure the Egyptians, the Jordanians, I think in particular, and to take in the Palestinians and basically say that it's a humanitarian mission, when it's obviously the opposite. All right, so this one now, another one from Dave DeCamp on this subject at antiwar.com. And this is kind of just a short update on the potential for a ceasefire in Gaza. We're hearing a lot of talk and report about it today. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but I do think Dave is right here that Katz's remarks about building a concentration camp during any ceasefire period and then using that as an ethnic cleansing campaign will make Hamas much less likely to agree to the ceasefire. Now, Netanyahu was just in the United States, 2 days of talks at the White House, and one of the topics discussed was removing Palestinians from Gaza. I wrote this one for JudgeNap.com on June 8th. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said one of the topics he discussed during his meeting with President Donald Trump was removing the Palestinians from Gaza. Netanyahu said, if people want to stay, they can stay, but if they want to leave, they should be able to leave. It shouldn't be a prison. It should be an open place and to give people free choice. Well, we're working with the United States very closely about finding countries that will release what they say that they will wanted to give the Palestinians a better future. I think we're getting close to finding several countries. Now, it seems unlikely that any country would agree to be a part of this ethnic cleansing campaign, again, unless it's presented to them as a humanitarian effort for the Palestinians. But think of all the leverage that the U.S. has over the Egyptian and the Jordanian governments. I think we could probably cause the collapse of the government by withdrawing our aid from those countries. Look at Somalia, where you have 4 separate regions. The government in Mogadishu needs U.S. air power to stave off the advance from al-Shabaab. Puntland and Somaliland would love to have their independence recognized, and so could that be traded away? In Sudan or South Sudan, you have ongoing civil wars in those countries. Approach one side or the other. Same thing in Libya. Approach one side or the other and say to them, you want U.S. weapons, you want U.S. support, you want U.S. money. Well, take in all these Palestinians. And so I think with those incentives, as well as, maybe talking the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Qataris into saying, hey, take 10, 20, 50,000 of these Palestinians, use them as migrant labor like you would Filipinos or something like that. And, then suddenly, you're spreading the Palestinians over a large enough group of countries that nobody's taken over like 100,000 or 200,000, and you've effectively displaced the entire strip. And so when they're talking about this and when they're saying they're getting close, this is something they've been working on for 18 months. The U.S. empire has been waving its money, its arms around for 18 months trying to get somebody to bite on this. And I'm sure that, again, the more you could spread it around, the less it's going to impact any one individual country, the more likely that one of these rulers will eventually start signing on to it. And once one does, you could see several dominoes fall, and suddenly you have 200,000 Palestinians in Libya, 500,000 in Sudan. You have a couple 100,000 in different autonomous areas of Somalia, a few 100,000 in the Gulf Arab states, and then there's 500,000 Palestinians left in Gaza that could be expelled to Egypt and Jordan or something like that. So I think this is a real possibility. This is something that they're really working on. And of course, me and you are going to be the ones to pay for it. It's going to be our tax dollars. The money that our government takes from our hard-earned labor is going to be sent to facilitate a genocide given to a a Sudanese government, Syrian government that is going to commit war crimes against its own people with the money. But on top of that, it's a bribe to accept an ethnic cleansing. This is just one of the worst things our government has ever been a part of. So, of course, the Israel government has discussed removing Palestinians from Gaza as voluntary act of migration. However, Tel Aviv is intentionally making the strip unlivable to force Palestinians out of their homeland. Earlier this year, Trump called for all Palestinians to be removed from Gaza and forced into refugee stays in third country. Trump said he planned to turn the strip into a resort city dubbed the Riviera of the Middle East. He said Palestinians would not be able to return once it was rebuilt. So finding a country has been a challenge, but like I said, I think they're working on it and probably moving closer and closer to their goal. All right, this next one here. ISIS-linked Palestinian group admits to coordination with Israel. A Palestinian group opposed to Hamas and that has ties to Hamas has received support from Israel, its leader now admits. Yasser Abu Shabab, the head of the ISIS-linked Popular Forces, discussed coordinating with Tel Aviv in an interview with Mekan, Israel's Arabic language public radio broadcaster. He said, "We keep Israel informed, but we carry out our own military actions." Abu Shabab did not directly state that the Popular Forces received direct support from Israel. He explained his organization is supported by a number of parties, and there are things we can't talk about publicly, which I think is a wink and a nod that, yes, it is Israel supporting this group with weapons on top of an Israeli officials have said that they are giving them weapons, including the former defense minister Avigdor Lieberman, and this was confirmed by Netanyahu, basically saying that this is a policy that allows us to keep our soldiers safe. So Abu Shabab and his group and his gang have been backed by Israel against Hamas. He said in an interview, adding that he was seeking to eradicate Hamas's injustice and corruption, adding, "We will continue to fight no matter the bloodshed. Right now, Hamas is dying. They know their end is near." An IDF officer explained to Haaretz, "There are many groups that oppose Hamas." Abu Shabab went several steps further. "They control territory that Hamas doesn't enter, and the IDF encourages that." The Popular Forces have admitted to looting aid entering Gaza, although they claim they do not steal the food. Abu Shabab fighters are also involved in securing the aid distribution sites run by the U.S.-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. IDF officers say some Palestinian aid seekers who have been killed and wounded near aid sites were shot by the militant group. And so this is obviously not some better force than Hamas. This is just a counter to Hamas that Israel is using as a part of their genocide of the Palestinians of Gaza. Next up here, U.S. will spend over $1 billion building military bases for Israel. The U.S. is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade and build new military bases for Israel. The total cost of the facilities could exceed $1 billion. So Haaretz reports the U.S. military aid construction program for Israel includes ongoing projects valued at more than $250 million, with future projects expected to exceed $1 billion. The new bases will accommodate refueling aircraft and helicopters. And one of the additional projects is building a new headquarters for the Israeli Naval Commando Unit. So Washington provides Tel Aviv with a massive amount of military assistance. The U.S. government has an agreement to send Israel $3.8 billion in security aid every year. Since October 7, 2023, Washington has provided Tel Aviv with an additional $18 billion in military assistance. The U.S. military has also spent billions on operations to benefit Israel. The U.S. fought a war against Ansar Allah in Yemen in an attempt to break the Red Sea blockade on Israeli-linked shipping. Washington has also spent billions of dollars on interceptors to shoot down Iranian missiles. The military support for Israel has given Tel Aviv a blank check for genocide, multiple invasions, and provoking aggressive wars. Washington's weapons diplomats supported the United Nations, and U.S. military shooting down Iranian missiles has insulated Israel from almost all consequences of its attacks on Gaza, the West Bank, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran. And so just goes to show how much we're helping the Israelis. Next up, this one from Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. Israeli settlers set fire near ancient church in West Bank Christian village. So a group of settlers set a fire near the ancient Christian church in the Palestinian Christian village of Tabeh in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. So in a joint statement from the priests of the three churches in the city, the Latin Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, and the Melkite Church, condemned the attack and asked for action in the face of growing settler violence against the village, which comes amid a spike in settler attacks across the West Bank. The priests, Father Donald Corey, Father Jack Noble Abed, and Father Bashar Fedwa, said the statements that they were speaking against the ongoing and grave series of attacks that have targeted the city, the only remaining village in the West Bank where all the residents are Christian. And this is important. You know, the Israelis like to present this as a conflict between Muslims and the Jews. And it's really just the Muslims who won't let the Jews live in peace. But here we see that the Jewish settlers really don't want other religions on their land, and that includes the Christians, not just the Muslim Palestinians, the Christian Palestinians as well. All right, next up here, Netanyahu nominates Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. James Rushmore wrote this one in the news section for the Libertarian Institute on July 8th. So during his visit to the White House on Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told President Donald Trump that he had nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. The announcement came against the backdrop of a dinner between U.S. and Israeli officials, during which the two leaders discussed the Israel-Iran war and the future of Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip amid the Israeli genocide. The meeting unfolded as negotiations in Doha between Israel and Hamas entered their second day. It also marked Netanyahu's third trip to the U.S. in less than 6 months. So Netanyahu said, "The president has already realized a great opportunity. He forged the Abraham Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one country after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, with the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee is nominating you for the Nobel Peace Prize, which I think is deserved." Trump responded, "Coming from you, this is very meaningful." Now, when Israel talks about peace, it's very important to understand that really what they're not looking for is peace, but capitulation. You know, in this meeting, Netanyahu said, sure, the Palestinians could have a state, but they can't have a military or many other things that any other state in the world would be able to have. And he applies this to the rest of the Middle East as well. Nobody could ever have military power to challenge Israel, which means everybody has to capitulate to everything Israel demands, or Israel will just go to war and attack them, backed by big brother Washington. And so there is no peace. This is just warfare. But this is probably an effective way for Netanyahu to get Donald Trump to do what he wants. While it seems like the conflict with Iran should be over, Trump is continuing to agitate. President Donald Trump suggested the U.S. may attack Iran if Tehran does not agree to a peace deal. In April, the president gave the Islamic Republic 60 days to make an agreement on its nuclear program. When a deal wasn't reached, Tel Aviv and Washington used the deadline's justification to launch an unprovoked war on Iran. So at a dinner with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, Trump told the press that he was ready, willing, and able to strike Iran. I will tell you that in my view, I hope it's over. I think Iran wants to meet. I think they want to make a peace, and I'm all for it. Now, if that's not the case, we are ready, willing, and able, but I don't think we're going to have to be. In March, Trump delivered a letter to the Iranian supreme leader, giving a 2-month deadline to make a deal. At the time, Axios correspondent Barak Ravid reported that the chances of an Israeli war with Iran significantly increased at the end of the 2-month window. Talks between the U.S. and the Islamic Republic began in mid-April. After Israel attacked Iran on June 13th, Trump said Iran's 60-day period for diplomacy has expired. We knew just about everything. We knew enough that we gave Iran 60 days to make a deal, and today is 61, so we knew everything. Now, I find this to be very concerning, and I think if Trump expects the Iranians to negotiate at the barrel of a gun, he's not going to get what he wants out of this. And if the demand is that Iran capitulate, basically surrender, give up their nuclear program, as the Americans and the Israelis are demanding, that this is just setting the stage for another major fight between Israel and Iran, and likely involving the U.S. So Iran's president says the U.S. pledged Israel wouldn't attack during previous nuclear negotiations. So the Iranian president told Tucker Carlson in an interview that was released on Monday that the U.S. said it wouldn't give permission to Israel to launch an attack on Iran during the recent negotiations. And if you remember, just was a day or two, I think maybe even just hours before Israel attacked Iran, Trump was posting on Truth Social that he was committed to talks and meeting with the Iranians in Omani-mediated talks that were supposed to happen. I think the attack started on Thursday night. The talks were supposed to happen on Saturday or Sunday in Oman. And so the idea that the Iranians are just going to return to the table, I don't think they're that stupid. I think they're going to be very careful about re-engaging with the United States. And in fact, we had the Iranian foreign minister saying that trust must be rebuilt before the two sides engage again. Now, two other, I think, important notes here, articles I wrote for the Institute. This one on July 7th. Iranian missiles hit 5 Israeli military bases during the war. And so I believe it was a total of 6 Iranian missiles hit 5 Israeli military bases, and this is a minimum. Israel isn't admitting to what was hit, but this is a review of satellite images obtained from the University of Oregon by the Telegraph, and they had experts go over them, and they believe there were 6 missile strikes on Israeli bases. And if you look at how the conflict went on, initially, Israel is able to down a lot of Iranian missiles. As the conflict goes on, they're not able to down quite as high as percentage, and that's likely because they were running out of interceptors. Now, Iran seems to be preparing its air defenses for another round of conflict. Iran trades oil to China for air defenses. I wrote this one on July 8th for the Institute. So following the aggressive Israeli war against Iran, Tehran is importing air defenses from China and paying Beijing in oil. So Iran has taken possession of Chinese surface-to-air missile batteries. Tehran rapidly moves to rebuild its defenses destroyed by Israel during their recent 12-day conflict. It's not clear what missile systems they're receiving from the Chinese, how many they're receiving. My guess is probably some fairly basic and easy to use systems first, but then maybe we will see the U.S. ramp up and Iran ramp up and take possession of some more advanced missile defense systems. Now, last story I have here today, U.S. revokes terror designation for HTS, the Al-Qaeda offshoot that took over Syria. And of course, this is something I've been screaming at you guys about for months and months and months now, that we have embraced Abu Mohammed al-Jawlani, the terrorist leader of Syria. And not only have we removed the bounty and the sanctions on him, but now on his band of Al-Qaeda thugs, Harit Tahrir al-Sham, we should be just livid at our government for doing this. There is no excuse to embrace the people in the world who hate the United States of America. I'm not, for sanctions or global economic wars that we've waged in the past. However, waging this war against the Syrian people for 15 years with these extensive sanctions and backing the jihadists, and then once the jihadists take over, removing the sanctions, is certainly putting American people in danger, but I think is also the wrong move for the U.S. standing in the world and the Middle East. All right, everybody, that will do for the show today. Apologies for my voice. I'm trying not to cough all over this interview. Hopefully I'm feeling better tomorrow and could get out another show. And of course, we should be back to our regular schedule next week. And yep, that'll do it. Thanks, everyone.